Hey Sandip, hi, how are you?
Can you hear me now?
Perfect. This
Much
is,
better,
yeah, this is Aflatun as they say, yeah, this is Dolby, yeah.
Okay, very good.
How
I'm
have you
glad.
been doing? Long time.
I'm good. I was telling you that it's very strange, but I have been so busy during COVID times. It's not funny. I whipped out my bucket list early in
Wow.
April, in March, April, and I found that it was overwhelming and overflowing.
Wow.
so, so I suddenly found my day was filled up with number of things, which is
Wow.
wonderful. I'd much rather be extremely busy and not have the time than the other way around.
Sure, sure, sure. So Sandeep, just an inquisitive question. Normally, people learn a lot of things from you, but if you had to pick one thing that you have learned from quarantine period, what would that be?
There are many things I have learned, I would say, but I would say
Sure.
that what comes to the top of my mind is that how little can human beings really survive on.
Oh,
When you really think about it deeply, we have so many clothes, we have so many things, so many material things, so many activities,
sure.
and actually you can live with very little.
Yeah.
And that makes you very humble and makes you start thinking about rejigging your whole life, your
Sure.
possessions, and saying, did you need? And because you end up managing all those things,
Sure. Sure.
so
Sure.
your life actually can be very simple. The
Well
second
said.
thing, it also makes you very introspective and
Yeah.
gives you a lot of time to think. You when you are running on the road, you don't think as much, but when you sit down to catch your breath,
Sure.
so many thoughts come to your mind, and this is
Absolutely.
that particular moment.
Sure.
There are many things, but I would say that these two or three things are probably top of the mind.
Sure. No,
I'm sure you
couldn't
feel the
agree
same way.
more. Yeah, absolutely, and
Yeah,
absolutely, a lot of things have kind
yeah.
of reset in everyone's life.
Somebody once asked me that, um, what do you need to do when you retire? So if I say that, if I retire every day, I need to be dining out and I need to have the finest wines and scotches and malts, and I need to drive a Porsche car and I need to change my model every 3 days. I need to take a holiday to Europe every 2 weeks. Then I have to have a certain lifestyle and I have to build it up.
Yeah,
But if I want to be Mahatma Gandhi,
sure,
I will sleep on the floor. I will drink the goat's milk from my own farm. I will eat the tomatoes from my farm. I'll spin my own cloth. I need very little to live,
yeah, well said.
you know, and
Yeah,
you will realize that you already have it.
absolutely, 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 absolutely. So, another thing I wanted to ask you on roasting part, right? Just to kind of refresh the people who would be listening to us and you as well. So, I've started this series called Quarantine Toasters, wherein I talk to a lot of influencers like you, irrespective of organization or designation, someone with whom I would have crossed paths, and if someone has left any positive impression on me, this is the time I'm using to talk to them, say 20-25 minutes, and spread the word around LinkedIn and make other people feel good and feel inspirational. So that's the
I
series.
have
Yeah.
been thinking about you and about
Sure.
this little thing that you're doing, and it is of course very clever. But more
Sure.
importantly, it is so apt. And it is amazing how in moments like this you have created a very interesting platform,
Thank you.
and you are actually, this is the world of aggregation of data. The
Yeah.
Googles of the world are doing it. So your content is actually coming into you and you're putting it together nicely because you're presenting it, you're providing a service, a value added service to people
Sure.
by putting it together in digestible bits, and in a formulaic way people are going to benefit from a very diverse set of people. And I think it's a wonderful design.
Sure.
And it's
Thank you
and the
for being
best
so
best
kind.
and the best part about it is, Swapnil, it's a very simple idea, and the simple ideas are the most impactful.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Thank you for your
you
kindness.
don't you
So,
don't mind that during the time of the when we're having a conversation that I keep drinking a little bit of my coffee?
absolutely, absolutely,
Okay.
that's absolutely fine.
Okay.
uh, so yeah, so I was just coming to the toasters part of the quarantine toasters. Yeah, so just if you had to reflect.
So have we started recording or not yet?
That's right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is on since the beginning. That's okay.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
great.
we are good. Right. So just to if I to just speak the word quarantine toasters, the toasters part of it, that came in because I love roasting personally. So if I had to reflect back on you, maybe back in college days or back in 9 to 5 office days, were you one of those guys who would love roasting others, or what's your personal take?
No, I was always I think I always had a sense of humor,
Sure.
but I realized very early that before you start roasting somebody, you must have the appetite to be roasted yourself.
Absolutely. That's the first
Because
rule.
because it can't be a one-way traffic. You can't bully people and ask them questions and
Sure.
make fun of them.
Absolutely.
And you should be able to take a joke on yourself. So there have been instances, I think my friends and my family, everybody will tell you that I can take a joke on myself. If and yes, I have pulled people's legs. I used to be a prankster when I was younger. Even now, I lighten up the moods with people. But I think that roasting also has its own framework of rules.
Sure.
You should not border on the obnoxious, not get personal, not get
Absolutely.
sensitive.
Absolutely.
And as long as you are within those parameters and your heart and your mind are clear headed and you have no agenda,
Sure.
just except for have a little bit of fun on the side, I think it's playful and it's quite nice. But at times it can turn ugly when the roaster gets ahead of himself or herself.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There is all yeah, there is a thin line. Yeah, couldn't agree more. So Sandeep, I was just thinking that you've had what about 40 plus years of an illustrious journey, illustrious professional journey, I should say, and and I was just thinking, even internet is younger than you, right? I mean, internet came in
You make me sound really
1980.
ancient.
No, I mean, internet came in 1982 or 83, I believe, right? So if you had to just walk us through your through your 43 years of credentials, how would you do that?
I'm very fascinated with your question because I sometimes believe that I have actually straddled in my lifetime, which probably most people do, but more so people of my age, that we have really straddled two completely different generations of life.
Sure.
When I look at the generation of my parents and ourselves, there was a difference in the generation, but it wasn't as stark
Yeah.
as it is today. And I think technology and the speed of light and the way the world has grown and the emergence of the millennials and all those kind of things have
Yeah.
made a dramatic difference.
Sure.
I mean, a large part of how I was brought up as a child was also the way that my father was brought up by his father.
Absolutely.
But I want to say that it's the same for my children. My approach to my children has been a lot different from my parents. So that itself tells you a difference in approach. I actually started my career very early at the age of 20. And at that time, we used to have all of these old school traditional companies, traditional businesses, no internet. We used to have faxes. Faxes and telexes were supposed to be new things. I remember that you had to wait for years and years for a telephone connection.
Yeah.
And I often, in my speeches, I say that, when a girl was 15 or 16 years old of a middle class family, her father used to book two things for her. One was a cooking gas connection, and the other was a telephone connection, so that by the time she was ready to get married at 20 or 21, she would have both. That was what it
Sure.
is. And today, children are playing catch with phones, and they're changing their phones every other day, and the phone has a computing power far in excess of something called ENIAC, which occupied several floors of a building.
Yeah.
So there has been a difference, a stark difference, and as a result of which, now technology has really raced past us to an extent that people are not able to keep pace with it. But the good part is that unlike the previous developments of technology, today technology is becoming more and more user friendly. You don't have to go through the basics to go to use the technology, because the interface of technology is becoming actually more human. For example, who would believe that in order to increase the size of a photograph, you did this with your finger, you change your photograph like this? These are human actions.
Absolutely.
You are not typing a URL, or you are not having to remember a formula, or an algorithm to do that.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you are speaking and some things are happening. So these are all human. So technology has also advanced to an extent where it has taken away the myth of technology and brought in the joy of technology.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I went through a school where we had these traditional bosses and traditional ways of working, uh, doing paper reports and tedious ones, traveling by buses, by trains. To suddenly everything now has changed to another dimension.
Yeah.
We are 400 people talking on a Zoom call, and you are picking up the phone and talking to somebody in San Francisco. I know exactly what my son is eating in Seattle in the morning. I mean, how amazing is all that? I mean, and so but we have seen those two generations. So we have had to adjust a lot, uh,
Mm-hmm.
because the computing power of the younger generation is a lot more than ours. We are a lot more traditional, structured in our thinking. I'm not saying that the younger generation is not structured, but their measures of thinking are very different. For us, a job was very, very important. We used to have I would say, a job for life, and they have a life full of jobs.
Yeah.
There's a
Well said.
difference.
Yeah.
So for them, you go and tell somebody, I'm not offering you a job, I'm offering you a career. And they say, are you kidding? I want to change after 3 years. So there is a difference. And I used to find the difference even in my own family. Can you hear me, Swapnil?
Yes. Yes. I can.
I
There
think
will
you
be a bit
froze.
of
Froze.
fluctuation. Yeah. Yeah,
Okay,
it's just
okay,
the
don't
internet.
worry.
Yeah.
So I was just saying that in the same organization, you will find people who are there used to be people who are 35, 40 plus who would say, I need a job stability, I want to be here forever. And there'll be others who saying, like, look, when I've done my 5 years, I'm quitting, I'm going somewhere else, I'm going to do something new.
Sure.
I don't care if it pays me less, but I want to do something new and exciting.
Yeah. Yeah.
The older generation is measuring the length of their cabins, the size of their cars, and their salaries. And the younger one is saying, no, I mean, I want to do something for the greater good of this world. So it's a very,
Sure.
very and we've had to actually straddle. So our first few years were tough because we were still applying our old principles and making youngsters work like us. Today we are all, the other way around. We are getting mentored by youngsters and
Yeah.
saying, this is our world. And I think the more curious and learning you are, the better you will be equipped.
Sure. 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 So much to learn, Sandeep. And just curious. So your WhatsApp status of repurposing life, does it come from the same the same story that you articulated on how you have rediscovered your life across the generation?
You know, Swapnil, I'm a very introspective person.
Sure.
I'm very deliberate. I think a lot about issues and things. And I'm a student of, although I'm an engineering graduate and an MBA, which is traditionally what most corporate people want to be.
Yeah.
But at heart, I am a person who loves literature, history, anthropology, and also human behavior. And therefore, a lot of that makes me very, very thoughtful all the time. I'm interested in people's cultures. Why do they do like this? Why do they behave like this? Why do they speak like this? Anything like this queers a pitch with me.
Sure.
I also get a lot of thoughts around me. I see a splash of water and it's a shape for me. I see a stain and I see a creative picture, and that's how I am. So I
Nice.
rejig myself almost every day. So
Wow.
it's not by decades or periods and all those kind of things. There was a time when books and stories used to have a profound impact on me, much greater than people. But I find that sometimes you watch a stirring thespian actor, or you watch a visionary political leader, or you watch even a humble hawker.
Yeah.
or you in the station, and you can learn so much and you can get inspired. So I keep repurposing myself all the time. I would say repurposing is a very strong word, but I would keep tweaking the repurpose, because you can't have uh, transformational changes every second. Then you will be
Sure.
going all over the place.
Sure.
But I must admit that from the past, the first few decades to now, the period of regeneration is getting shorter and shorter. Unlike when I was younger, they used to take longer periods. So I can look back at life at 5-year periods and 10-year periods. Now I'm looking at days and weeks and saying, what was I in March? What am I now?
Yeah.
So time has become asymmetric.
Sure.
It's no longer following weeks and towns. You don't wait now forever. Somebody wants to launch a picture, a tune like Kolavari D becomes a hit in 3 hours. You don't wait
Absolutely. Yeah.
for a test marketing, a launch, a this and that, etc. All that's gone. It's now or you, and then you immediately change it. And like they say in the digital world, now you fail fast,
Yeah.
but you put it out.
Yeah.
If I'll take you a simple example, people in my generation, if you give us a new phone or a new car, we will want it to have all the features that the old car had plus plus.
Sure.
And if it doesn't have the features of my old car, I will not move to the new car or the new phone.
Yeah.
A youngster, if he finds that he doesn't care about his old features, but if he finds exciting new features, he will buy it.
Sure.
So there's a difference, and that's what's happening. So I think today the entire world has changed in the manner of doesn't discriminate between age, gender, experience, rank, wealth, social status. So it has become democratized completely.
Sure.
And
Sure.
therefore, if you are not relevant and contemporary in that world, your repurposing will not be enough if you are not relevant. And
Yeah.
so I think that itself forces relevance. I would lastly like to say two things. When I went to business school, I had a professor at Harvard called Clayton Christensen, who unfortunately died a few months ago.
Oh.
He was a professor of strategy, and he was a professor who did a lot of work in the area of strategy, and he actually worked with Intel on that very famous Intel Inside campaign. He wrote a beautiful book, but that was spiritual and philosophical for a professor of his standing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the name of the book was How to Measure Your Life. And I think
Wow.
it's a book that I recommend to everybody. And I wish I had read it when I was 21. I read it when I was 57. And it still had an impact on me. So
Wow.
when you are repurposing yourself, you have to ask yourself the question, how do you want to how do you want to be remembered after you've gone? What is it that people will write on your epitaph, so to say? That,
Yeah.
what did he do?
Yeah.
The second thing that drives repurposing to my mind is the depths of your own potential. You keep pushing and pushing and
That's
pushing
right.
and saying, what can I do? What am I capable of?
Yeah.
Can I hit 6 sixes in an over? Is it possible? If you start with the mindset that no, it's not possible, it's a mathematical possibility, and people have done it.
Yeah.
So therefore, these two things, your purpose in life, the impact, combined with the ability of tapping your potential, is what, to my mind, shapes my repurposing.
Wow, very impactful, Sandeep. Very impactful. So, again, an inquisitive question of the same line. So, in your 45 years of working with the teams, leading the teams, working with multiple managements, almost everyone goes through this phase where your mistakes become the focus, but your good work is overlooked, right? Especially in the tough times. So, if you had that situation ever, how did you handle it? How would you suggest others to take it?
See, the world is replete with examples of good, meritorious work not getting recognized. It happens often and across businesses, across life. Actually, it happens
Yeah.
inside families. It happens every day.
Sure.
One of the siblings will feel that somebody else is getting a better deal. Uh, it happens all the time. But when it happens, it is very disappointing for anyone.
Yeah.
And more so if something which is inferior in quality, gets more than it deserves, and that hurts even more. So I think to have a feeling of hurt is natural, and it's not something that you should fight. The question is, what do you do with that hurt?
Exactly.
So when you are younger, it angers you. Sometimes you sulk. You sometimes become a recluse, and then you start blaming everybody in the world but yourself,
Yeah.
and you find a devil in the entire system. But with time and age, one realizes that you've got to get even better. Whatever you did the last time, you have to do it even better than the past performance. Your only competitor in life is really your own past, not anything else.
Wow.
And I have also noticed that any good environment that you work in, a company or whatever it is, cannot keep a good man down for too long. You may keep him down for a while, but
Yeah.
not for too long, because, and reputation for good work is built by consistently improving and consistently doing good work. And actually, it's a sign of weakness. If you think that the world is against you and it's coming down on you, and nobody's helping me, that's a very weak form of dealing with this kind of rejection. Because, and rewards and recognitions are not the only measure. The real measure is in your own court of justice, saying, did I do good work?
Yeah.
Did I do better than last time? Because if you yourself don't pay self-respect to yourself, nobody else from the outside system, because that's the number one thing. Do you feel you did good work? So sometimes you find that when you actually sit down and introspect, you think, no, I thought I had done something good, but actually I haven't. And okay,
Well
I
said.
could have got a measure of somebody's, concession on the matter, but if I have not done top class work, I will not do it. So just thinking the world against you is a weakness. So I think with time, I teach my teams to say, good work not being recognized should spur you to do even greater work.
Very inspirational.
And almost always you will see that, I mean, somebody was telling me that Jack Ma was rejected some 1,000 times on some patent. He did not, he'd applied to Harvard hundreds of times or whatever. I don't know what the number is. You see, so, and you know, the 1,001 idea of Thomas Edison was the electric bulb. So, which
Yeah.
means he had 1,000 failed ideas. So, I'm saying,
Yes.
I mean, would you, if he had given up on problem number two, there would have been no electric bulb.
Yeah.
So, it is self belief and continuing to do good work. I've always believed in that. And this is not philosophical jargon or spirituality and all those kind of. It's not about goodness. It's the
Sure.
way of the world.
Sure. Sure. No. Well said. So two words which which off late we hear a lot in the professional culture and in the offices and elsewhere is empowerment and leadership, right?
Yeah.
Before we go to the leadership part, I just want you to reflect back on what is empowerment in your belief, because people have multiple interpretations of that, but I just want to understand what is an ideal empowerment as per you.
You know, we sometimes try to overanalyze and overcomplicate simple things. I mean, I've always tried very hard to keep life simple. I think empowerment is to my mind actually a very very simple and straightforward thing.
Hmm.
The point is that you have to make a distinction between empowerment and not confuse it with delegation and abdication.
All right. Yeah.
Empowerment is a very powerful word because it has power inside the word.
Yeah.
People delegate things to others. Said, I have told him to take over my job. He's not doing a good job, or the CEO is just absent. But for empowerment to be successful, it is very important to create an atmosphere of empowerment. What is an atmosphere of empowerment? The atmosphere, very often you will find that somebody will say, oh, you want to train somebody, throw him into the deep end of the pool. I
Yeah.
find that it's the most obnoxious way of training somebody.
Sure.
Before you throw him into the deep end of the pool, teach him at least two things: how to tread and how to float. You don't have to make him an expert swimmer. Then let him do what he wants to do. So, similarly, when you empower people, it's important to train them to act decisively and to be skillful. And I think that's very, very important, because if you don't equip the person to succeed, the entire process of empowerment will fail. So you have to teach the person to do this. Secondly, you have to ease them into the job. You can't throw them into an empowerment position without easing them. You have to allow them allowance to gain. Now, what happens normally, and this is Swapnil a problem, that the question is, who decides the timing? If the boss says no, he's not ready, it
Hmm.
sometimes appears that he's reluctant to give charge.
Yeah,
So the
that.
question is that the timing is very important. If you have to understand that, let me continue to skill the guy in a manner that he will not fail completely. Because sometimes what happens, if somebody is not adequately trained and thrown into some area, while sometimes people do learn how to swim the hard way, the point is, if they make a costly error, it harms them all through their life. It leaves very deep scars. So the person loses self belief. And if a person loses self belief, no matter how much you empower him, he will not act decisively. So therefore, you have to ease him into the position. Otherwise, it can inhibit the person.
Sure.
The other thing is that the quality of empowerment is that the boss who empowers anybody must also have the ability to have the appetite to deal with failures.
Very
because
important.
because if somebody fails and you sort of mortify the guy and kill him and condemn him for his failure, he will never rise again.
Yeah.
Today, as I have grown a lot older, there is a saying that when you have a problem, you keep your friends close but enemies closer.
Yeah.
Today, I keep my successes close to me but my failures closer. And when I meet with youngsters, I tell them, please don't ask me what made me succeed. Please listen to where I failed. Because for
Very
me,
important.
every time that I have succeeded, Swapnil, and I'm not saying this out of ultra modesty, I've always felt that I've succeeded because of being at the right time, right place with the right team. I just was a leader who was not an obstacle, because leaders can be obstacles.
Yeah.
Whereas every time I have failed, I have always felt that I took a decision as a leader which may not have been right. So, therefore, that book of failures is something that I tell my children. I said, in my will, I want to leave you my book of failures, because that's what will really teach you the school of hard knocks.
Wow.
When somebody does a good job, you have to also praise the person in a measured manner. Too much praise too soon can make the fellow think, oh my God,
So true.
I
So
am
true.
God's gift to management. And then he will suddenly, with his blindness of his success, he will stop thinking and he will lose the basic quality of good decision making, which is to know facts and to make the difference between fact and feeling.
So
And you
true.
get emotionally caught up in that whole thing. Many supervisors and leaders just leave and abdicate and go away, and they think that is empowerment. You cannot abandon leadership. Your role is to produce leaders.
Oh,
So I
well
think
said.
that's the way I look at empowerment. And
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, and just to take on that word leadership, right? So now there are a lot of young leaders and a lot of young entrepreneurs coming up, compared to, say, a couple of decades back. Do you, in your personal opinion, believe that, say, low ego plus a high IQ and EQ is a very underrated quality, these days? Or what's your take on that?
I was telling you a little while earlier that I straddled two generations during the time when we were youngsters. Leaders were very hard to reach. They were larger than life. They were always seen as mega heroes. They came and gave great speeches. Even to shake their hands was an honor. And you could never get to see them for days and days together. They came down and gave diktats. They were like Moses coming down Mount Sinai with 10 commandments, that kind of thing. So uh, then people started rubbing shoulders and started saying, a leader should be something like a basketball coach.
Mm-hmm.
And he sits with them, he teaches them, but he coaches them to succeed and the teams to succeed. I think over a period of time, there have been examples of low ego and high IQ. It's not a new discovery.
Mm-hmm.
It has been around for ages.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you look at Gandhi and Mandela, they had no positions, they had no titles. One of them was in jail actually when he was
Sure.
stirring a whole mass movement.
Movement,
So
yeah.
sometimes we feel that if we don't have a title and if we don't have a rank, then we can't show leadership. That's not right. They inspired an entire generation and it continue to inspire generations even now after they have gone away. And they overthrew the world's most powerful colonial regime ever in the history
True.
with with some very simple processes. Gandhiji didn't even raise a gun,
Yeah.
but he overthrew the most powerful artillery and the battle, ships and everything of the world in one go.
Yeah.
So today what has happened is business schools, after studying leadership styles for years and years and years, are trying very hard to articulate the qualities of leadership, which is why they are beginning to use words like emotional intelligence, low ego, because the reason is because they want to fight against a paradigm which says that leaders are born leaders. And business
Mm.
schools are saying no, management schools are saying no, corporations are saying no, saying that we can build leaders
Yeah.
if we are able to imbibe these qualities in them. Because half the time they don't do what they do as leaders because they're unaware that this is the quality that is required.
Well said. Well said. Well
So
said.
therefore, now because of the articulation of these words, suddenly we are saying, "Oh, is low ego and high EQ very important?" The history of the world is replete with leaders right from the beginning who have had low ego and high EQ.
Mm.
There have been autocratic leaders also who have been considered successful, but success again is a definition that changes. Was Hitler successful? Was Mussolini successful? Was Stalin successful? They were autocratic leaders.
Yeah.
People followed them. There is somebody who said once that when Schuyler spoke, people said how well he speaks.
Mm-hmm.
But when Demosthenes spoke, people said, let's march against Greece.
Wow.
So my point is,
Impact.
what were those leaders trying to do? Leaders who make you march against Greece are the real leaders. And they can be very convincing. And it's not only about oratory, it's about inspiring people to do and instilling self belief. So I think it's a very interesting subject. Leadership, you can go on and on
Yeah.
about, effective leadership. And, traditionally people think a leader has to be, this tall, gangly, handsome, blonde guy with lots of Harvard degrees and X degrees and Y degrees. And he just speaks so well and he tramples around. He's got a booming voice. He's a superstar. But I mean, let's look at our own home examples. Look at an Indira Nui. Look at a Satya Nadella. Look at a Sundar Pichai. Are they your copybook leaders? I mean, if they were 25, 26-year-old youngsters, are you saying, oh, these three guys are going to become leaders? But they not
No.
only became leaders, they became extremely effective leaders. Today, they are not textbook leaders, but textbooks are being written on them today.
Yeah. Very true. Very true.
And it is because of the fact that they have imbibed very deep sense of consumer understanding, employee understanding, understanding of technology. Their styles are inclusive. They bring people together. They are humble people. They accept their mistakes. They move on. They will cry when their employee is suffering. I mean, they are not afraid to show their emotions.
Sure.
They are saying at the end of it, I am a human.
Sure.
Yet they're optimistic, they're confident. They are people who are transparent. There is a sense of basic honesty in them. So people
Yes.
trust them. Leadership is also about trust besides being compassionate. It's also about being trustworthy. Look at this lady, what's her name? Jacinda Ardern, who's the Prime Minister of New Zealand.
Yeah.
I mean, is she your typical flamboyant, great political leader when you compare her with a, stomping Trump, or if you look at a Erdogan somewhere, and you look at of Turkey, and you look at, those big chancellors in
Not
Germany?
at all. Yeah.
She's a mother. She became a mother in office. She went
Yeah.
and had a baby. She handled COVID. She went and she cries with the workers who are suffering. She sits with medical people. She speaks from the heart. You know, she's not a Stalin or a Roosevelt. She's so highly regarded because she's effective. She communicates very well. I mean, when I say communicates well, she communicates what she wants to communicate, and people understand her language.
Articulation.
You know, she's trustworthy. She keeps things extremely simple for people, and she solves problems. End of the day, she solves problems, and she's not afraid to show her own human frailties.
Very true.
I'm telling you, one day this lady is going to end up being an all-time great prime minister. So I would say that a leader takes you to a place where you won't go by yourself.
Sure, sure, sure.
Think
Well
about
said.
this line.
Yeah. Very deep, and that's what made me pause for a couple of seconds. Yeah. Cool. So, Sandeep, I'm sure you would have, if you had to break your own journey of life in multiple phases, what is that one piece of advice you would have given yourself along the way, which you now feel that if I could have imbibed this particular thing at an X point of time in life, XYZ would have been a better thing. Is there any such thing, first of all?
Of course, there are. I mean, life is not perfect. Nobody is perfect. If anybody says that he did everything right from the beginning, check his surname. His surname must be God. Um,
Well said.
uh, you know, firstly, I would say that you can't turn back the clock.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean I'll not answer your question. But the other day, one of the ladies, my wife's friend, she was talking to me, and she's a spiritual leader, and she was telling me something. She was telling me that there are two things that make you unhappy in life. One is to look at the past all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and the other one is to compare yourself with somebody else.
Simple but
So
true.
so nothing is to be regretted about the past. But yes, it's important to understand the past, because that is very important. And as a result of which, what happens is, there is no one piece of advice that I would give myself. I would give myself many advices, but I would say that, knowing the person I am, and my wife also says this to me, I wish I had an ability to say no to things and no to people. In that respect, I'm a bit of a softie. I say yes to everybody. Swapnil says, Sandeep, can you speak to us? I'll say yes, Although I may not have the time, I may be struggling. I just feel, no, Swapnil is doing something noble. Let me help him. But sometimes, I wish, sometimes life is not about what to do, but what not to do.
Very true.
I'm not saying that you are the example, but I'm saying, I wish if I could have really been a lot more emphatic if I had learned to say no to things. I wish I was physically fitter. I was overweight for almost 25, 30 years of my life. I'm still struggling to lose my weight. I wish I was a lot lighter, not for any other reason, because I think I might have been physically and mentally more agile. I don't
Yeah.
think I was not, but I think I could have been.
Sure.
I had a deep calling inside me to write and teach, which has become now part of my bucket list. So I'm
Very
beginning
good.
to write and teach, but I wish I had started to write and teach much earlier than before.
Sure.
Swapnil, I had to, for many years, because I was a very disciplined. I was a boy brought up with a lot of discipline, and the firstborn child of my father. My
Oh.
father wanted me to be the perfect boy, so he was very strict with me. He followed the adage of spare the rod and spoil the child. So he was very tough with me. But he wanted me to be perfect, and he loved me very deeply. But as a result of which, at some point, because of my father's larger than life personality, I became a little shy and introverted, and I had to fight a lot all my life to get out of that. So
Sure.
later on in life, I was not shy, I was not introverted. I was happy to speak to hundreds of people, 400, 500,000 people at a time,
Yeah.
go out and talk to people. But I wish earlier in my life I was a less shy.
Mm-hmm.
I went to, people talk about Ivy League schools, and I'm not saying that all schools are not good, but I'm saying I went to Harvard at the age of 57, and I wish I had gone there at least a
Wow.
decade earlier. And it really transformed me. I studied with professors like Michael Porter and Clayton Christensen, etc. Um, you know, They were amazing people, Dick Vita, and it was very, very powerful and great professors, Ranjay Gulati, Das Narayan Das, Anant Raman. I mean, there are a galaxy of fabulous professors from whom I learned, and it was, learning in a haloed institution has a lot of things going for it. First of all, the real atmosphere of quality is very high. It's such a powerful academic institution. It just raises the level of your own mind.
Absolutely.
The faculty is stimulating, they are high achieving, they keep provoking you to think deeply. And then your peer group. Your peer group is outstanding individuals. You chuck a stone and you'll hit a brilliant guy. And I was with 180 CEOs of top class companies.
Sorry.
And that in itself goads you to greater heights. So that's why I have actually encouraged both my children to go and seek that kind of education. One of
Amazing.
my son has completed it and is now started working. My daughter has done one bit and she's doing another bit. So,
Very good.
and I'm seeing a transformation happening in them early in life. It was not just one thing. There are many things, but these are some
Sure.
of the things that I wish I had done better.
Amazing.
But I don't regret what I have done, because there are many things that I have done which I would not have given another chance. I may not get that chance.
Sure. Good, Sandeep. A lovely sine cosine graph for the last half an hour odd, but it's been great talking to you. If you had to leave this, I mean, I wish we had time to go on and on, but then if you had to live this discussion, by sharing, say, one or two key messages to each professional who is going to listen to this, irrespective of the age group, what would those be for their own betterment?
Swapnil, I know we've been talking for half an hour and maybe our time is running out, but this is a very, very important question.
Sure.
And I'll take a little time on this if
Absolutely.
you don't mind. So
Everyone would be happy.
So
Go
when
ahead.
I was about 20 years old, I started working. And I had a friend of mine, both of us, I must have been 20, he was 22.
Mhm.
We both went to listen to a Gita discourse by Swami Chinmayananda. We had just started working.
Okay.
And as usual, like youngsters, we went and got ourselves front seats and we sat down. And then Swamiji came and he started talking. And he looked around the room and he said, he looked at me and he said, what's your name? I said, Sandip. He said, how old are you, Sandip? I said, as Swamiji, I am 20. How old is your friend? I said, he's also around 22. He says, have you looked around the room? I said, yes. How old do you think these people are? I said, they're quite old. They're 60 to 70 years old. He said, yes. So he's asked the whole audience, he said, what are these boys doing here? So the whole audience started laughing. And he said, you are laughing because they are young, but I want to ask you all a question. Why do you come to me at the end of your life's journey and not at the beginning?
Wow.
He said, how can I help you when you are 70? I can help you when you are 20. So these boys, I wish you had more of your friends coming and listening to me. And suddenly, I felt so relieved because I thought he was going to ridicule us. So when I talk to youngsters and people around, my point is that those who are starting their journeys, in the middle of their journey, towards the sunset of their careers, there are many things that I have learned along the way, because, there are a lot of things that are taught to you by styles of bosses, and you find people succeeding for all the wrong reasons. Then you start having conflicts in your mind. Then should I be doing this? Being aggressive, kill the other guy. Get aggressive, snatch things from here. Don't share information. These are all typical conflicts that you find with everybody. But at the end of it, when you actually succeed and become good and you're respected and you're reputable, what is very good, Swapnil, is that it's very important to be a good person. That's the good part of it. And if I was to say, no, you've got to be a very crooked and cunning person at the end of it, it's a very hard thing to do. So I think firstly, it's important to possess very, very high intellectual and moral integrity. Very important. You know, you could be the most qualified guy, you could be the most brilliant guy, but if you do not have intellectual and I'm saying intellectual also, which means respecting
Yeah,
other
yeah,
people's ideas and things. It's very important to always stay grounded and humble. We talked about humility of Mahatma Gandhi
yeah,
and Jacinda Ardern and all those people. They are all very humble people. They don't get ahead of themselves. They don't think they are God's gift to management. You
yeah.
know, they just. The other thing is that, you know, I find that all successful people and great people, you take a Bill Gates, you take a Warren Buffett, you take a Jeff Bezos, all these people are very, very curious people. Curiosity is very important. So you have to keep on asking questions if you don't know, and be honest and keep honesty and curiosity as your closest allies. Because if you don't do that, you will not learn.
Yeah.
In today's world, it was not probably so true about 30, 40 years ago when we started. But in today's world, everybody should be able to wrap their head around technology. Because if you don't understand technology and what technology can do for you, and I'm not saying you got to be an algorithm expert or an AI expert or a machine learning expert, but the understanding of technologies. I mean, I ran an automobile company. I ran a consumer durable company. I today work for a advisor, a construction company. I advise a fiber company. I ran two $20 billion businesses in my life of some of the largest mobile companies in the world. Um, you know, end of the day, you must understand your business and your technology. If you don't understand it as CEO, you are dead duck. And you know, I often now, of course, I used to say this earlier, but I'm not saying this anymore. I used to earlier say that, you know, there are two kinds of organizations: one that is digital and one that is dead. Uh, my point is now that is no longer an option. Digital is already here.
Yeah.
The question is how much, not when.
Yeah.
So the other thing is that whether you're going to become leaders, and leaders doesn't necessarily mean that everybody is going to become a CEO in his life, but even if you lead an institution, a movement, or supervise a department, or become a professor, you must learn to communicate well verbally and when you put your pen to paper, because uh, communication, there is no such thing as too much communication.
Yeah.
Leaders must engage all the time. You know, people, you know, I tell you what, people do not have a problem with good news or bad news, but people have a lot of problem with uncertainty. क्या होगा, लॉकडाउन खत्म होगा, नहीं होगा? That uncertainty kills people. You tell them next 6 months you're locked down, they will deal with it, but you
Yeah.
don't know what's going to happen on Monday morning, kills you. So
Right.
communication is very, very important. So you have to wear, then I was telling you, you have to wear your learning cap all your life. The other thing is at a very philosophical level, all businesses and all people, and if you see successful entrepreneurs, you ask them the question, they're not trying to become billionaires overnight. They're trying to solve some problem in the world. Somebody is trying to aggregate information and saying, okay, now I have become Google.
Yeah.
Somebody is saying, I'm going to become the supply chain for the whole world online business. He becomes an Amazon. They're all solving problems. You ask Mukesh Ambani what business he's in Geo, he will not tell you he's in mobile business. He will tell you, I'm trying to digitize India.
Sure.
So everybody must understand that solving of the problem, the ultimate goal is the most important thing. These ranks and designations and salaries and pays are not something to be chased. If you want to chase anything, chase excellence, chase transformation, chase impact on society. How, I mean, people should know कि इसने कुछ किया और change किया. You know, salaries and this thing are all byproducts. अपने आप आएगा और जाएगा. I remember one entrepreneur who's now worth about $6 billion. Somebody said, you know, you are very young. तुम अपना 20% stake बेच दो, and you cash this money. This is an old school guy telling him.
Okay.
So he said, sir, जिस दिन मैं इसको एनकैश कर लूंगा और मेरे हाथ में 2 बिलियन आ जाएगा, मैं दुनिया में लोगों का प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व करना बंद कर दूंगा. मुझे नहीं चाहिए. You know, that
Yeah.
mentality is
Mentality.
very important.
So true.
Then you leaders carry their teams all the time. you have to make your build leaders and make your boss always look good. Very important. You know, business
Well said.
schools teach you how to lead people, but nobody tells you the most important thing, which is how to deal with your boss. No, there is no subject called, no chapter called how will you, and he's the most important man.
The
It
boss
doesn't matter what your
management.
team thinks of you.
Yeah.
The other thing is, you know, everywhere there are people, and anywhere there's organization and there's success and there's performance, there is politics. You cannot be naive. You must understand office politics, but you should be apolitical. Not understanding office politics is foolish.
Sure.
Being political is devilish. So
Well said.
understand it, but stay away from it.
Stay away from it.
Uh,
Well said.
the the best executives execute all the time. They are not boardroom talkers. कि ऐसे करेंगे वैसे करेंगे. Some people make great boardroom speeches. और 6 6 महीने 7 7 महीने कुछ नहीं करते. But there are people who quietly execute, who are agile, and who don't wait. They are proactive. They don't wait for their bosses to give them work. In fact, I often used to say, कि job descriptions.
Mm-hmm.
People say, कि, what is my job description? I will do my job description. Job description is not your universe. It is the minimum that you should do for your job.
Wow.
You should always do more than your job description. Always exceed it. Finally, I would say, there are so much more to say, but I would say finally it's very important that if you want to be successful, you have to all the time be relevant and contemporary. You know, वो बोतल में लिखा होता है ना, use by date. वो use by date खत्म नहीं होनी चाहिए.
Sure,
and it is in your hands. So it's nothing to do with age. You know, a person at my level also is sitting and trying to learn artificial intelligence. We took our distance to learn blockchain, learn this, learn that, because you have to remain relevant.
Very true. Very true.
Or you can sit at home and read the newspapers.
Very true, Sandeep. Very true. Good. Thank you very much. I think it's been a great conversation, and I'm happy that I was quiet most of the time. It's always great to listen to you, and thank you for sharing your wisdom, your success, your failures, and your graph. Appreciate
Thank
your
you.
time, Sandeep. Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
sir.
Take care and
Welcome.
connect back soon. Thank you.